All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast. We are your weekly look into the wide, wacky, wonderful world of mixed martial arts. My name is Robert Winfree, and I am your host per usual. Um, all right. If tonight's show, man, I picked a real bad week to have some health issues. Um, you guys don't care about the minutia. Long story short, dealing with some back pain that I don't think is actually anything in my back. There's a lot of muscles that connect too, especially your lower back. And if you monkey with them, the pain manifests there. So I'm hoping that's all it is, because I really don't want my back to actually be screwed up. If it's, adjacent stuff that's just unhappy, then so be it. That's been screwing with my sleep all week, and suffice to say, here I sit, having a better day than yesterday. Yesterday sucked, but on very little sleep, and yeah, still in a bit of pain. So unfortunately for me, this happened to come up during a week where we've got stuff to talk about. Monday, last Monday, well, yeah, Monday, the UFC announced a bunch of fights after I'd done some speculating. So we'll talk a little bit about those that got announced. We have fights and, in some cases, some dates and venues for the next few UFC events: 297, 298, and 299. So we'll be talking about some of the announced fights. Some of those cards are more complete than others, which is understandable given how far out we are. So we'll talk that. Last night, of course, UFC 295. Um, Not the shortest amount of in-cage time in UFC history. There's some Dark Ages stuff that's really fast. But I think our main card clocked in at like, what, 13 minutes and change? For You paid $80 for 13 minutes. I mean, that's somewhat unfair because some of it, we'll get to it. Some of it was quite good. We have a preview, of course, as well. UFC on ESPN plus 90, and then I already mentioned some of the news, but that's kind of what we're looking at here. So, yeah, like, comment, subscribe, star rating, written review, any and all that good stuff to feed the unknown eldritch abomination that is the various social media algorithms. That all helps. Sharing around as well. Might have already mentioned that. But letting people know about the show if you think they'd enjoy it. Point them in our direction. Let us try to entertain. Yeah, I think that's all for the intro. So let's jump in, shall we? So last night, UFC 295. Um, Mentioned like 13 minutes or so of actual fight time for the main card. See, somebody else wants to do the math. There was. Oh, no, wait, it's longer than that. Sorry. A couple of those went into the second round. So, be 9, 7. So that would be. So, 20 something? Yeah, so that'd be 18. Call it 18 and a half. Or, sorry, 17 and a half. 19. 30. Yeah, less than 25. And if I wanted to actually do all the math on that, but I don't. So please take my word for it. Um, yeah, it was, but there was some quality stuff and some stuff worth discussing. So, um, main event for the vacant light heavyweight title. Boy, that division is a mess, is it not? Ever since John Jones left, that division has been wonky. So let's just very briefly rehash how we got here. So John Jones wins a unanimous decision over Dominic Reyes. Closely contested, slightly controversial. Um, Scoring it live, I scored it for Jones. Having watched it again, I tend to lean maybe a little bit more towards Reyes. But it's one of those things where I think I said this before. I think that's the first time I came away from a fight, even though I scored it for John live, that I thought he kind of lost that one. First time ever. I never had that problem with him before. I shouldn't say that's a problem, but never done that with him before. But he vacates that belt, and then Reyes, who a lot of people thought beat John, fights Jan Blachowicz. Blachowicz stops him. Blachowicz gets one title defense when he stops Israel Adesanya from becoming a simultaneous two-weight world champion. Then Blachowicz just gets stalled out in first gear when he fights Glover Teixeira. Teixeira can't defend it at all because he runs into Jiri Prochazka. Prochazka then injures his shoulder and has to vacate. Our fight for the vacant belt is Blachowicz and Ankalaev. That ends in a draw. So then we get Teixeira again and Jamal Hill. And Teixeira nearly wins that in the 5th round. Would have been hilarious. But Hill wins, then injures himself. He ruptures his Achilles tendon, vacating. Leading to this fight, the more hilarious side of things actually is, like 2 weeks ago, we had our I would say the presumptive #1 contender fight between Magomed Ankalaev and Johnny Walker, and that ends in a no contest. Because while Ankalaev has a tremendous amount of skill, and boy does he, that man just can't seem to make consistently good decisions when it really matters, and that's costing him. And now, again, this leads us inevitably sort of to Alex Pereira, who has one win in this division when he got a split decision over Jan Blachowicz, taking on former champion Jiri Prochazka. And for as long as this fight lasted, I actually think it was pretty good. Pereira comes out, and he's not jabbing a whole lot. He is landing his calf kicks, though, and I don't know what he figured out about himself, about his physiology, but if you look at how he throws those calf kicks, other people have talked about this. I'm going to talk about it briefly. He doesn't turn his hip over. Now, he's not straight up just slapping you with the inside of his leg. There's some motion there, but ideally when you kick really hard, there's biomechanics involved. You turn your hips, it generates more power. This guy's out here crippling people with less than perfect technique. Now, there might be something with his hips and with his body that this actually works better for him. Some people are weird like that. But some of what he does, man, is just so brutal, especially for MMA. He messed up Israel Adesanya's leg both times they fought. Man, he hurt Jan Blachowicz with calf kicks. And Blachowicz is made out of metal. I mean, watch some of his stuff, like when I think it was when he fought Ankalaev. Was it Ankalaev or was there another one? I can't remember. Hang on, now I gotta look this up. Because there was one of those fights with him, Mr. Blachowicz. Yeah, I think it was the Ankalaev one. He's landing pretty good calf. This is Blachowicz. He's landing pretty good kicks, but they're opposite stances. And that makes kicking to the calf very difficult depending on foot position of the lead leg. If you point the foot straight ahead, it makes it a little easier. If you cock it at an angle, it defends the front, so the inside, but it leaves the outside a little more vulnerable. It's just kind of picking and choosing how you want to do that. And he just decided, okay, I'm going to kick you in the shin. Like, not even landing on the calf, again, the muscled part. Just, that guy just went bone on bone, basically, and said, I think it's going to hurt you before it hurts me. And Pereira gave him problems in just a couple of calf kicks when they fought. So that's, yeah. He did that to, um, yeah, that really messed up Blachowicz when he fought Pereira because, I don't know, man, Pereira just kicked better. Um, and it just messed with him. Here it bothered Prochazka. Now Prochazka did a slightly better job of, I think, handling that than other people, but it started to mess with his left leg. Few things on Prochazka that I think need some. So I didn't give you the result. The end result is Alex Pereira wins via TKO. He landed that left hook, man. Dropped Prochazka in the second, got on top, landed enough elbows, especially on the way down to kind of prompt the stoppage, forward weight of the second. Uh, I didn't love the stoppage, personally. Now, I'm not going to get on my high horse here. Other people had more visceral reactions to this than I did. Marab was out there making noise. Dominic Cruz was not happy with the stoppage. He wasn't on commentary, but Cruz is a little bit. I like Dominic Cruz. I have a great deal of respect for his career. I like his commentary. His line on what's a good stoppage and what isn't terribly well defined, but it as a general rule, I think it errs a little bit far on the if they die side of things, just for my taste. Um, Not my favorite stoppage in the world personally. However, I can understand why the referee did it, and to the credit of Yuri Prochazka, he was asked about this. He said, "Yeah, I was out for a second there. My body kept going, and because that's what I trained it to do. But yeah, I was out for a second, and the referee made his call, and I don't think it was wrong." So you know what? My hat's off to that guy. A lot of people would have been very bitter about the way this happened, or getting whiny about it, or even if they knew they were out, they might lie about it. Um, Not him. He said, "Yep, I got flashed, and the referee did what the referee's supposed to do. Fair play." My hat's off again. My hat's off to that guy. That's a level of integrity. I think it may be the appropriate word. That is a little bit rare, a little bit rare in the space. Man, what do you want to say about Alex Pereira? This man he's accomplished something pretty incredible in the combat sports space. Two-weight world champion in Glory, now a two-weight world champion in MMA in the space of like, what, 3 or 4 years? He went from being the dual champion in Glory to now being he's not a simultaneous champions. I think in Glory he was. I think he had both of them at the same time in Glory. Don't quote me on that. I'm not up to speed. To now having won his second title in a second weight class in a second sport in the space of like 3 years. Now, there's some stuff that worked in his favor, and that needs to be acknowledged. So let me acknowledge that here publicly. One, he got preferential consideration at middleweight because of his history with Adesanya. Now, he still had to go out there and win fights, and that's not always easy, but his path to the title was shortened, especially relative to some other guys who have have had to take more circuitous routes. He got some preferential consideration there. That's true. He still had to win, and even with preferential consideration in terms of are you on the fast track or the long track, dude still had to fight Israel Adesanya and beat him. That ain't easy. And so there was that. Then there's the fact that light heavyweight is kind of a dumpster fire. I went over how we got here. We don't even have a real number one contender. Um, Jamal Hill says he's going to get a title shot when he comes back. I don't think that's entirely unwarranted. I don't. How do I feel about? I don't like his chances against Pereira. I'm not saying Jamal Hill is a chump. He's not. That's a bad stylistic matchup for him, though. Because he likes to strike. He's kind of a longer guy, but he got some smooth hands. But I don't think that striking, especially at light heavyweight, with Pereira for prolonged periods of time is really how you want to go about that. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't. I don't think that's a recipe for success. But we don't know Hill's timetable for his return, and Achilles injuries can mess you up. So, but after that, let's just posit a world in which that's the next fight. Like, who's after that? We had a fight get made. I think they announced they're doing a rematch between Blachowicz and Alexander Rakic. Rakic was out for a while after, because he and Tom Aspinall. There's somebody else too. Like, there were three guys in this very short period of time who had those same kind of knee injuries out in space, moving around. And we'll get to Aspinall in a second when we talk about the co-main event. But it's taken Rakic a bit to get back here. I rather enjoyed what we saw of the first fight between Rakic and Blachowicz. I had it one apiece going into the third when the injury happened. I like a lot of what Rakic brings to the table, but time off and knee injuries are nothing to play around with. And that's what he's coming back from. So, uh, have to wait and see. He's got tool. My friend Pat, who, if you're a long-time listener to this show, Pat has this weird ability to accurately predict talent when he sees it. A few years ago, he saw one of Rakic's earlier fights in the UFC and went, you know, at light heavyweight, that guy's got a shot. That guy has a lot of the stuff necessary to become champion. And, look, Pat accurately predicted Khabib before a lot of people did. He said, that guy, future champion. Who's the other one he nailed? I'd just like to give him credit for some of the stuff. I think he and I were both on the Max when Max fought Aldo. Either we were opposite, because I picked Max to beat Aldo that first time, which was a leap for me. Might have been Volk. I think I might have been on the Volk train before Pat was. Um, yeah, anyway. Sorry. So, we got to see how Rakic looks when he comes back. Hill's floating out there, but, dude, for a long time, man, a lot of us were looking at Magomed Ankalaev like, okay, you lost your UFC debut via weirdness at the last second. Legitimate loss, but he was beating the crap out of Paul Craig before that. Then he just never. Then he went on. The hype around him never grew back, even though he went on this long winning streak. Um, he just never kind of recaptured the imagination of the people. And then he gets a couple of these shots, and you're like, look, I'm not saying beating Jan Blachowicz is easy, but there were some questionable decisions being made there. And then I think unequivocally, just questionable decisions cost him, had that Johnny Walker fight go the way it did. So who knows what's up with that? Um, that division is still kind of a mess. It just is. Um, Wish I had a better explanation for you, but I don't. And so I don't know exactly what's next for Pereira. If Hill's able to, dude, Pereira after the fight was like, "Hey, Adesanya, come back up here and let's fight again." Adesanya doesn't seem interested at the moment. Um, I look, man, I'm not interested in another fight. Am I not interested? There are things about another fight between those two that I would very much be interested in. On the other hand, I don't know. I'm just not. That doesn't really get my get my heart rate up, you know? It would be good, and there's stuff about it that I would be interested in and excited for. But, like, I'm not sitting here going, hook that third fight between them and MMA just straight into my veins. I'm not. So, again, you've got Jamal Hill, and nobody cares about Jamal Hill, which is not fair to him, but is kind of the truth. And, man, what even are the rankings for this bombed out weight class? I genuinely don't know. Okay. So, yeah, Nikita Krylov sitting at 6. You get Anthony Smith still in the top 10. Yeah, this is. Let me just read this off. I'm gonna make a couple of assumptions here, based because the rankings haven't been updated after the results from last night, obviously. But your champion's Pereira. I assume Hill's gonna drop to number 1. Prochazka will drop to 2. Ankalaev will then be 3. Um, Blachowicz currently 4, Rakic 5, Krylov 6, Walker 7, Anthony Smith 8, Volkan Oezdemir 9, Ryan Spann 10, Khalil Roundtree 11, Azamat Mirzakhanov 12. That's actually a guy we might need to, one of the few sort of up and coming guys worth maybe paying attention to. Dominic Reyes at 13, who hasn't won a fight since before he fought for the belt. Hang on, that's ridiculous. I call BS on this. Okay. You're still in the top 15. A man who has not had a fight in over a year. He did have one scheduled recently. Talk about that in a minute when we get to some other fights that have been made lately. He's on a 4-fight losing streak. The last 3 of them have been pretty brutal knockouts. His last win was in 2019 over Chris Weidman. Before that, he got a slightly dubious split decision win over Oezdemir. You could have scored that for the Uzman. I don't remember how I scored it, but that could have gone to Oezdemir. The absolute state of this division is this guy who hasn't beaten a legitimate light heavyweight since, when was that specifically? March of 19? So what, 4.5 years since he has a win over a legitimate light heavyweight? And spare me the John Jones stuff. Like, yeah, you can argue he won the fight. He didn't. There is not even anything close to an argument for the next 3 after that. Blachowicz stopped him, Prochazka stopped him, and Ryan Spann stopped him. But this guy's still ranked, apparently. Then Alonzo Manafield 14 and Dustin Jacoby 15. This division sucks. Just look at that. Just, man, between Anthony Smith, Volkan Oezdemir, I'm not saying those are bad fighters. but Smith has like more miles on him than my car. My car is closing in on 300,000 miles. That dude is just, and credit to him, man. He's been in the trenches, and I'm not saying anything bad about him in that respect, but this division has been in dire need of an injection of talent for a long time, and it just hasn't gotten it. So, your new champion, Alex Pereira, you know what? Bless him. There are. I ran through a little bit of some of the stuff that aligned in his favor, in terms of like the stars aligning in his favor. You've still got to go out there and perform. And, dude, beating Yuri Prochazka is hard. Prochazka hadn't lost in like. His last loss was what? That weird one to Muhammad Lawal? Back in like 15 or something? Yeah, December of 15. He avenges that loss a little bit later, but he had like a 13 fight winning streak or something. Hang on. 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, 13. And one or two of those you kind of raise your eyes at. Um, but, man, he beat Vadim Nemkov. Like, he made Nemkov quit after the first round when they fought. He beat Lawal when they rematched. He stopped Fabio Maldonado very quickly. You know, beating this guy is no easy task, and Pereira went out there and did it. So you can get preferential treatment and the UFC can have your back, but if you can't go out there and perform, it doesn't really amount to anything. More on that general narrative in a couple of fights, because, well, Mackenzie Dern. So more on that later. Um, I don't know exactly. There's a decent chance we get a rematch between these two. Not immediately. I don't think that's warranted. But it's entirely possible that Prochazka goes out there and wrecks somebody. Pereira beats, hypothetically, Jamal Hill. Like, and they meet up again. Like, that's very, very possible. And I wouldn't hate it. I would not hate it. On the Prochazka side of things, he smoothed out some of his rough edges. He did look a little rusty, um, which is to be understood. It's understandable. He was out for a while, and shoulder injuries will mess with you. But he wasn't quite the wide open wild man he was in a few of his previous fights, especially in the UFC. Bit more measured. Found some success. This is not. There's an argument to be made about who won the first round. You could have given it to Pereira for his leg kicks. I lean towards Prochazka. The leg kicks were good, and they were very important. Like, he didn't like those. He landed a couple of good punches, though, did Prochazka. Had a nice right uppercut going at different periods of time. Got a takedown. It took him a bit to find offense when he was on top because Pereira's defense from down there was pretty good. He was good about trying to tie up arms and disrupt punching lanes. But before Pereira was able to get up, he did eat some, I thought, some pretty relevant elbows. It was enough for me to lean towards Prochazka, but giving that to Pereira, I think, is perfectly fine. You could argue a 10-10 in that round, I think. And give all three judges, I think, gave that one to Prochazka, which a little. Dude, there was one judge in particular last night. I'll yell at him later when I get to it. But, oof. There was some weird judging. Just put it that way. There were some bad scorecards turned in this one, along this night. Um, I don't know who Prochazka fights next. Maybe Anthony Smith. Um, I don't know who Smith is fighting next. But I mean, he's going to fight someone else ranked. Krylov? He might get stuck fighting the winner of Rakic and Blachowicz. Um, I don't know what they're doing with Ankalaev. He might do Prochazka and Ankalaev. That's a thought. I mean, do they just remake? Do they remake Ankalaev and Walker? If they do, he can fight. He might fight the winner of that. There's a lot of moving parts here, which is weird considering how I just mentioned how trashy that division is. But there are still timing considerations and the general UFC machinery to be aware of. So I don't know. I wouldn't want to be the next guy to fight him. I will put it like that. This did not. Not only does Prochazka not strike me as the kind of guy who crumbles after a loss, he's lost before. This didn't strike me as the kind of performance, as the kind of loss that would change you. It's never good to get knocked out, but this was not a prolonged beating. This was not a I have altered the course of your career kind of loss. This didn't look like it to me. Next dude that stares across from that madman, that's probably gonna go real bad, real bad for him. But that was your main event. Great intensity between these two. Oh, the stare down they had was freaking amazing. Loved that. Yuri's walkout music, by the way, also top notch. Neither of these two seemed to. There was no animosity. Like there was competitive fire, but there was no bad blood. Um, wouldn't mind a rematch at some point. Not right away, but there's a good chance these two square up again, and that'll be something. So that's the state of light heavyweight. Let's move on to heavyweight, shall we? Co-main um, you know, I didn't have the best night picking, especially like the top three fights. Underdogs had a bad night all night. I think there were 13 fights. Yeah, 13 fights. There was one draw on the prelims. Um, prelims. Yeah, I think only four underdogs won all night. And in my defense, I did pick at least one of those guys one of those correctly. Because I picked Diego Lopez, and I feel okay about that. um, I got, but I got the top three wrong. I can explain. Look, getting Prochazka and Pereira wrong, I don't feel bad about that. It was a competitive fight for as long as it lasted. Um, and I can see why I got it wrong. Getting the co-main event wrong because in little over a minute, was it 109? In 69 seconds, I know what you just said after I said that, by the way. Tom Aspinall stopped Sergey Pavlovich with punches. I said that on a full camp, I would have picked Aspinall um, without a whole lot of reservation. I thought the short notice would be a bigger factor, and it did play a bit of a role, I think. Especially Aspinall after the fact, mentioning that he injured his back. And again, you have my sympathies on that, sir. And the last like week, and it really affected him. He came in heavier than he'd ever been. He was 261, I think, for this, and normally he's like high 240s, low 250s. He might be mid 50s, like low to mid 50s. Um, and he came in heavier than that. So I thought that would play a role. My hunch was that like Pavlovich would find a way to get the win here, and then Aspinall would win another fight, get a rematch, and win it then. That was kind of how I thought that would go. Nope. Man, what do you say about Tom Aspinall at this point? Um, I've mentioned this before when talking about Aspinall, but I'm going to go into a little bit more detail here. He moves so well. Watch the I don't even mean like footwork patterns. Like just watch how he moves. He moves like a guy 40 pounds lighter than him. And I don't mean that he moves like, a light heavyweight or a middleweight. There's some flat middleweights out there. I mean, he looks like he just kind of glides. And even if you were to put up a heavyweight, let me give you an example. I'm not comparing their skills, but watch how Muhammad Ali would move around a boxing ring, right? Ali was 220 and change for the majority of his, especially his prime. Like what you could kind of identify as some of the best of Ali, 220s and thereabouts. He might have been 230 at one point, but not a huge guy, not a huge weight at heavyweight. But for heavyweight at the time, he was actually quite tall. In fact, it was one of the things that helped him beat Sonny Liston. Believe it or not, because Liston had that stupid dude. Sonny Liston had like 80, was he 84 or 86 inches of reach? I think it was 84, but the thing is, he's like Sonny Liston had like 84 inches of reach, which is John Jones or Sergey Pavlovich, but he was only 6 feet tall. Crazy, crazy ape index. But watch Ali move around the ring, and he kind of just glides. Aspinall, different footwork, different sport, but guy who here 260, moving like a guy who is 30 pounds lighter, just dancing out there. His feet are so fast. And it can take some work to weaponize quick feet, but if you know what you're doing with it, it is devastating. If you've never even sparred someone who's just light on their feet like that, it is the most frustrating thing in the world. You're constantly having to reposition. Pavlovich was here. They're constantly pulling you where they want you to go, even if you have good like cage craft or ring craft. If you're like, okay, I know the angles, I know what I'm supposed to be doing. If they're faster on their feet, in addition to being like light on them, you feel like you're in cement. You feel like you're wading through mud. It's terrible. And Aspinall out here just gliding around like he's on ice skates or something. It is nutty. It is just nutty. And moves you, makes you go where he wants you to go, and then pop. Tom Aspinall he's been into the second round what, twice in his career? Like he's fought good guys in the UFC, and I think only Arlovsky got to the second round with him. Dude, he fought Alexander Volkov, who is no joke. Just took him down, got side control, and hit a straight armbar. Just casual straight armbar on frickin' Volkov. Moving well, fast feet, fast hands, good power, good combination punching. Like maybe the closest analog you could find in MMA to him in some respects is Kane. And he's lighter on his feet than Cain Velasquez. Kane's hands might have been just a hair faster. Because if you didn't watch Kane in his prime throw them hands, um, it was crazy. But I think Aspinall's again lighter on his feet even than Kane. Moves just out there like it's nothing. Just sliding around, always in position, always able to counter you. Now, that doesn't mean Pavlovich had no success here. I mentioned it already. Pavlovich has 84 inches of reach, which is kind of crazy. And that distance bothered Aspinall for a little bit. I mean, the fight lasted 1 minute and 9 seconds. When I say it bothered him a little bit, that's kind of what I mean. It was a little bit. But Pavlovich hit him. Officially, he's only credited with one landed shot. I give him credit for a little more. I think I gave him three. Um, but there was a left hook that he landed that Aspinall didn't quite have the range measured properly. Got buzzed, and Aspinall immediately like, okay, this is the benefit of good footwork and just having good legs. You get buzzed, circle. Circle and move. Take a second reset. And he did. And obviously stopped him not too long afterwards, but there was a moment there. Um, I don't know what's going to happen at heavyweight. Now, in the wake of this, somewhat naturally, the internet kind of went, so why do we want to watch Jones and Stipe again? We want Jones and Aspinall, and I'm not saying I don't understand that. I'm not saying that's not a better fight. I think it is. I'm saying we're not getting it. Both Jones and Stipe are looking for the door, which I don't blame either of them for. Stipe's 40 something, been doing this for a while, has had his brain rattled more than once, and is the most successful UFC heavyweight champion ever. If Stipe's ready to basically hang him up and wants one last fight, but it's got to be the right fight, I don't blame him. I don't blame John. Like, John's been doing this for a while. I've covered his entire UFC career. And man, John's fought. Look, you joke about light heavyweight at times, or certainly now. John didn't duck anybody coming up. He beat like 3 generations of light heavyweights. Because on his way to the belt, he ran over a lot of the previous guys. Certainly a few of them. On his way to the belt, not real, a little bit. Then he beat Shogun, made him tap to strikes. Beat the previous generation because he beat Rashad and Rampage. Like those guys were in there. Beat his contemporaries in like Daniel Cormier, Alexander Gustafsson, that level, and then beat Thiago Santos and Dominic Reyes, and there's one other one that I think to count in that same vein. To count OSP in that same vein. I mean, beating Cormier twice, I think, and stopping him with a head kick was kind of nice. Dude, you can count on one hand the number of UFC champions who have done the 3 generation of fighters thing. It's like him, it's like John, George, and Anderson. That's kind of it. Just in the UFC. Would I change that if I talk? You could throw Fedor in there. I have to go back. There's part of his resume I'd have to go back through with a slightly more fine-toothed comb, but you could maybe throw Fedor in there. That's a real hard thing to do. If John is like, all right, I want one more, and I want it to be against this guy because this guy matters for legacy, and I don't blame John. Like, it's this weird situation where I understand it sucks in some respects, but I don't blame anybody. And if you're the UFC, Jones and Miocic is still a marquee attraction, more so than Jones and Aspinall. Not as much, that difference, not as much as it used to be, by the way. This performance from Aspinall did a lot to close that gap. But I think both John and Stipe are just kind of set on, you know what, it's going to be my last fight. This fight makes sense. That's what we're doing. And you can like that or you can not like that. I'm not telling you how you have to feel about it. I'm telling you I think that's kind of where we are. Um, but if we kind of remove Jones and Stipe from the equation, because I think they're both going to retire, Aspinall might be the guy to run heavyweight for a bit. We'll probably get a rematch with him and Pavlovich, and I'd like to see that when both guys had actually prepared for each other. Uh, I'd still favor Aspinall, because that would fit under my other criteria of like full camp. Gonna favor Aspinall, but we might get a rematch between those two. I think the only guy I might favor to beat Aspinall at this point is Gone, and I'm not sold that I would. I don't know that I'd pick Gone. Um, he's got some wrestling issues that Aspinall can exploit. So Aspinall might be the guy. There's still some defensive issues with Aspinall. He's a little vulnerable to leg kicks. He spends a bit too much time with his chin up in the air and he leans a little bit. Against a certain level of opposition or against guys with a certain body type, that's not going to be that's not going to end anything. Like that's not always the worst thing, but that's kind of what got Pavlovich's fist home and kind of buzzed him. So something to work on there a little bit. But he might be the guy. At this point, I don't know who I would reliably pick to beat him. Gon beating him wouldn't surprise me because Gon's pretty good. Wouldn't surprise me. But I think I'd favor Aspinall. Um, yeah, that dude. Josh Barnett said something on Twitter that I think is probably true. Because Pavlovich, he's got a lot of power, and he buzzed Aspinall here. He doesn't quite have the same destructive power that Francis Ngannou does. I mean, Ngannou, poof, just could knock out a bull, just right between the eyes. Um, but the thing Josh Barnett mentioned that might be more, as much as Ngannou's power is a giant determinant factor and contributor to his success, maybe more so, especially at heavyweight, is Ngannou's chin. Think back on this for just a second, everybody. When was the last time you saw Francis Ngannou hurt in a fight? Look at all the punches. If you want an example of this, go rewatch his first fight with Stipe. Look at all the stuff Stipe lands on him, and Ngannou is never rocked or wobbled. Never. Um, dude, he got elbowed by Tyson Fury when they fought. Full on elbow, man, just in the head. Didn't cut him, but the kind of shot that Tyson Fury, he doesn't have the biggest punching power, but he's a big dude, and big dude able to leverage his weight like that'll hurt you. He got elbowed by Tyson Fury and barely broke stride. An enormous component of Francis Ngannou's success is that I don't know what you would have to do to hurt him. I mean, he got hit. Dude, Cyril Gane hit him a lot. First couple of rounds of their fight. Never, never seemed to wobble him. Cyril Gane has some power. Stipe can thump. Couldn't, as many times as he hit Francis, he couldn't hurt him, much less stop him. Uh, so And Pavlovich, to his credit, Pavlovich might be, again, he's not quite Ngannou level of I touch you and you die power, but Pavlovich has serious power. And but he's Aspinall just hit him right, and that changes everything. So, uh, yeah, Aspinall, man, might be the guy. Might be the guy at heavyweight. He is. What was the thing? So he is the first. He's not just the. He's the first British-born UFC heavyweight champion. And I know you might just immediately go, wait a minute, what about Bisping? What about Leon Edwards? They're both British citizens. Bisping, I'm talking purely geography with this, by the way. Because Michael Bisping was born on a military base in Cyprus, which is military bases and embassies count as this. They count them as like foreign soil. So whatever country that is the base that or the embassy that is technically their land. So he is a British citizen. He was just not born on like the island of on the relevant island on the island of Great Britain. What do they call that island? Because Ireland is its own island. They call it like the British Isles, but that's because it encompasses a few other things. I don't know if that island that is like it's technically England, Wales, Scotland. It's England, Wales, and Scotland because Northern Ireland, yeah. England, Wales, and Scotland. I don't know what that big island is called. Might just be Britain. Either way, so he wasn't born there, and he was not born on the British Isle. And then Edward was born in. Is he born in Jamaica? Because he tends to come out with the Jamaican flag. I know he was raised in. I know he was raised in Birmingham, but yeah, he was born in. Yeah, Leon Edwards was born in Kingston. So Aspinall, first guy born in the British Isles, specific British. No, because Ireland. How do you count that? Because McGregor. I don't know. It's way too pedantic a distinction to actually matter. You know what? How about we go with that? Too pedantic. Um, he got that. This is the first time. I'm 99% sure this is the first time that the UK has had two UFC champions at the same time. Because right now you got Edwards at welterweight and now Aspinall is the interim champion at heavyweight. I don't think there's been another time because Bisping didn't overlap with anyone, and he's the only other one. So you know what? Yeah. So you got a few bits of trivia for those of you that care about that sort of thing. I don't know who's next for Aspinall. We don't know. We have to wait and see what's up with John and Stipe. Um, my hunch is they're both kind of gonna be done after that, so you would need somebody else. Again, I don't know, but I like his chances to hold that belt. Put it like that. I like his chances to hold that belt a lot. He is very good. All right, took a bit of time talking about those two, so hopefully we can speed through some of the rest of this here. Next up, Jessica Andrade defeated Mackenzie Dern via TKO punches, 3:15 of the second. Um, early on, Dern looked okay. Her jab was kind of working. She hit a nice headlock throw, and I'm not even gonna kill her for that one. It was actually a nice one. That's a technique that gets kind of memed on occasion, and not even for a bad reason, but it's because it gets memed on. We tend to ignore that it's a legitimate technique, and that has its place. And it absolutely does. And this was, she used it at an appropriate time. But couldn't control top position, not fully. And once some of the exchanges started going longer, Andrade kept landing. And Dern kind of fell apart. She got dropped in the first at the end of the round. Then she got dropped 3 times in the second before the ref finally jumped in and stopped this one. Um, I don't really know what to. I'm going to try to phrase this in a way that's not mean spirited. Mackenzie Dern looked like someone in this fight who had not really sparred. She had a couple of combinations that she wanted to do. She would step in, throw a couple of punches, step out. It looked like pad work. The problem is, it looked like less than good pad work because even when you're working pads, the guy holding them for you should be checking your guard position, making you roll under, making you move. Like, she landed a couple of good punches on Andrade, but then she just kind of like, oh, I landed. Now what? And froze up, and Andrade's like, I know what I'm doing, and just bombed on her. Um, Dern looked pretty good in a lot of respects when she beat Angela Hill the last time. She looked worse here. And I don't know who is guiding Mackenzie Dern, but whoever it is, man, you have screwed up along the way over the years, and it's very obvious. Let me give Dern a couple of pieces of credit. More in the service of talking about like how did we get here. She clearly has competitive drive. She, one of the big things about a lot of guys who come to MMA from jiu-jitsu, they are not composed under fire. This is when we talk about guys who don't like getting hit. Nobody likes getting hit. But when we say so and so doesn't like to get hit, it's not, oh, this is a good time. It's, oh, what do I do? How do I react to this? That was one of the big failings of Brock Lesnar. I mean, let me just go with him because he's a very obvious example. He just didn't really know how to respond when punches started coming back at him. He had a pretty good chin, but the first seconds or so after he got hit, he just reacted very, very poorly. Happened when he fought Carwin, happened when he fought Kane, happened when he fought Overeem, even happened when he fought Mark Hunt. Like, it was just a problem. That takes time to develop, and he didn't for any number of reasons. Just wasn't comfortable with it. A lot of jiu-jitsu guys, man, they fold when they come to MMA and suddenly first couple of times they get hit. Like, oh, I mean, I don't even it's a bit more obvious and I hate to say unique, but it's very apparent with a lot of jiu-jitsu guys. But there's even some people, man. Usually you get this if you're watching someone's like first couple of professional fights. They will, because it's different. It's different when it's for real, even different from hard sparring. There's people who can do hard sparring who, when suddenly it's for real, there's just something different about it, and stuff short circuits a little bit. Dern doesn't have the problem that a lot of jiu-jitsu guys have of what do I do? She seemed to get lost not because she was panicking, but because training was letting her down. Watch some of her other fights, man. she is not afraid of contact. She's not afraid of the violence in that respect. But she has not been able to weaponize that. Her takedown, like her wrestling game or takedown game is frankly pathetic. She averages less than one takedown per 15 minutes. Let that sink in for just a second. She's one of the most decorated female jiu-jitsu athletes ever. Certainly the most decorated one to transition to MMA. And this woman has not been able to consistently get one takedown every 15 minutes. I There's so much wrong about that. How have we not addressed this? Whatever work because she was with the what did I say Ruka RVCA whatever. She was with that gym for her last fight, which is for her last couple I think. Is Jason Perillo operated out of there, and Perillo's a good coach. He seemed to be kind of working on her hands a little bit. I don't know who she's with now, but they did her a giant disservice because she didn't look as good as she did in her last fight. And that's not wholly on I'm fighting someone who hits really hard. I'm not saying fighting someone who hits as hard as Jessica Andrade is easy. It's most certainly not. What I am saying is the problem she's having, if she'd fought like this when she fought Angela Hill, she would have lost. Like almost none of what she was doing in that fight that worked consistently was even present here. I don't know what we're doing with her. Look, the UFC's kind of been waiting for her to really break through. They like her, but if you can't go out there and win consistently, there's no point to having the promotion like you. It just doesn't matter. Andrade broke a pretty serious losing streak. She'd lost, what, 4 in a row, I think? Um, so she got a win that she needed. I don't know what I can't predict the future for any of these people. Um, I still have questions about Andrade. I still think she might be on the wrong side of washed. But whatever she was still able to muster here was enough to get the win. And hey, God bless, man. I don't see her getting back to the title, though. Put it that way. And at this point, I don't know that Dern will ever get there. Moving on to lightweight. 90 seconds of fury here, baby. Benoit Saint-Denis defeats Matt Frivola, head kick, 131 of the first. This was a great fight for as long as it lasted. Both guys came out and got after it. Benoit Saint-Denis got the better of the stuff on the feet. Nice takedown from Frivola. Pretty good sweep from BSD right away. Up into a clinch. When they're breaking the clinch, he throws the head kick. Frivola's hands are down. Pretty much all she wrote. There was some nice stuff between these two. Even like the build-up in the immediate aftermath. Both gentlemen are veterans of the armed forces. Frivola was, I think he was in the Air Force. And if you have military history, feel free to insert your jokes about the Air Force if you feel so inclined. Saint-Denis wasn't he a paratrooper or something for the military? Yeah, yeah. He was part of the 1st Marine Infantry Paratrooper Regiment. And he's seen some stuff. If you look at some of his look at some of his deployments. He's probably seen some stuff. Um, Sorry, Frivola was not an Air Force guy. He was just Army Reserve, which is actually what my dad did. So that actually means I could have made fun of the Air Force and it would have been okay. Yeah, sorry. Um, but there was a lot of like both gentlemen acknowledged each other's military service. There was a moment after it was done where they saluted each other in sincerity. It's nice to see that on occasion. There's a lot of stories and discussion around veterans, especially in the United States, that focuses rather heavily on like the extreme tragedy. And seeing a couple of guys who had been there, had done some of that, and are, you still have to process some of. I would say more Saint Denis in this case because he served in like Mali and there was a war there, and in parts of other of West Africa, like doing anti-terrorist stuff, which is again, man, that's no joke. But he seems to be on the other side of whatever trauma he might have incurred in that respect. And we these two again, we had a good fight, man. Saint Denis is. I think I said this before. The fact that his UFC debut was up a weight class on short notice against Elijah Zaleski dos Santos skewed how a lot of people saw him. It ruined his stat line forever. I mean that. He took so much. He took a lot of damage, and he took a lot of again, even numerical damage in addition to the concussive damage. Um, and it skewed things because he was almost a punching bag at points in that fight. If you watch this fight and maybe like the one before it, and even some of the one before that, you get a much better idea of how good he is and what his upside is. His upside is very good. He's action in a hurry. There's urgency to what he does. If he doesn't like his position, he's not waiting. He's not reckless, but if part of the position he's dealing with is, oh, steps are there's like step A, B, and C. A lot of guys will do step A, which is frequently something like get an underhook. Like get a same side underhook. Then things stall for a second. Like, okay, wait a minute. And then they have to like, okay, now we move to step B. Then we get on the hip. Then we start posting up. Then like it's just a little bit slower. As soon as that guy gets step A done, he is speed running B and C. And not recklessly, not stupidly, but rapidly. He is not there to hang around. He's got good offense. He's durable. He's got power. I am not here to stand up and say I think Benoit Saint Denis will be champion. It's a little bit too early to tell that. He's only been doing this for like 6 years. He's only got a handful of fights in the UFC. I'm not going to do the premature thing about future champion. What I am going to say is world of upside. World of upside in this guy. Um, Pay attention to him. Absolutely pay attention to him. So he got a really good win here. After the fight, he said, I want to fight someone in the top 15. Might have been top 10. He name dropped Dustin Poirier, Justin Gagey. Like, this guy wants to go to war. I respect it. I really do. He's not getting either of those fights, but he's starting. There's value in just putting it out there that this is what you want. Again, at different times, I'm more critical of that same kind of thought, but in this instance, saying, I'm doing the, I'm a warrior, I want to go to war thing, and these guys go to war, that's almost more branding than calling for your next fight. And at a certain point, that has value. Um, he also got to do he got to do some weird military, not weird, but he talked a little bit about like military history in his post-fight speech because he's in New York and he beat a New York guy. So he did the "I love New York, thank you to it's Veterans, Veterans Week Day here in the United States, Remembrance Day if you're Canadian, or they're close to each other. I forget specifically which is which. I forget specifically when Remembrance Day is. I don't know if they're the same day all the time. But so he said thank you to the U.S. for saving the French in World War One and World War Two, kind of like we did for you during the Revolutionary War. So it just weirdly nice to see some like um, respectful talk about shared history. Uh, so that was kind of fun. Um, yeah, dude, Saint-Denis is going to be a handful for a lot of guys. Pay attention to him. He is someone we're going to be paying attention to. For Frivola, sucks. Terrible loss. But Frivola's one of the man. I didn't mention it specifically, but the that Sarah Longo camp had a few different guys on this go. They had a bad night. They had a real bad night. Then kicking off the main card, Diego Lopez, one of the upsets I picked. One of the upsets I picked that I got right. One of the few. Knocks out Pat Sabatini 130 of the first round. I don't dislike Pat Sabatini. There's some good about his game, but I picked Lopez for a reason, and oh boy, he's all dude. Can we? His UFC debut, Diego Lopez, short notice, stepped up to Movsar Evloev and gave him a heck of a fight. He had a couple of near subs in that one. He's got killer jujitsu when he wants it, and he's the jujitsu coach at the Lobos gym, which is the gym that Alexa Grasso and Irene Aldana and come out of, amongst others. He's got and it's Alexa's uncle, I think, who is the like primary coach. He's a boxing guy. Um, you give a guy with his jujitsu credentials and ability and his jujitsu skills hands, you got a problem. And boy, do they have a problem. That division has a problem in the form of Diego Lopez. Uh, that dude has some pretty decent power and just minded to offense everywhere. Everywhere, 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 everywhere. He wants to hurt you. So he made a pretty good comeback after the Evloev loss. Um, that's somebody else, man. We might be talking about him for a bit. That was the main card again. A lot of short fights. On the prelims, I'll try to go faster. I promise. I know you know how long this is already. I don't, but at flyweight, Steve Erceg defeated Alessandro Costa via unanimous decision, 29-28 across the boards. Um, Good first round for Erceg. He kind of just beat Costa everywhere. Had a good jab going, good takedowns, good stuff from the top. Second round, Costa starts finding the target a little bit. Kind of buzzes him with some punches. Third round, I think Erceg realized in the second, oh, I'm better in the clinch. So the third round is him. All right, I'm gonna jab you. He hit him. I don't mean to say that he just dove headfirst into the clinch every time. A lot of double jabs into the right hand, but pushed him back to the fence, clinched up, and just, I've got control. I'm gonna do offense, and I'm gonna be winning. And that's not the most exciting style of fight, but I actually applaud the fight management IQ that he demonstrated there. That's a lot of guys are not that smart in the heat of things. He was. So credit to him for that one. Strawweight, Lupe Godinez defeated Tabitha Ricci via split decision. Oh, golly. There was a 30-27 for Tabitha Ricci, which is utterly indefensible. Two 29-28s for Godinez, more defensible. There was one of the rounds you could have given Ricci. Was it the first? It was either one or two. Um, but there was no this was ultimately Godinez's fight, and 30-27 for Ricci. Same judge who how stupid was this judge? Okay. This judge gave Mackenzie Dern the first round of that fight with Andrade. And did not award a 10-8 second round to Nazim Sadikov in his fight against Vyacheslav Borshev. Fire this guy. I think it was Brent Minner. I wish to be specific about this if I'm going to call for someone's job. Um, yeah, minor of some variety. What's his first name? It was Brian. Okay, Brian Minor. Yeah, fire this guy. Um, no idea what he's looking at. 30-27 for Ricci is utterly ridiculous. Utterly ridiculous. Then, yeah, solid enough win for Godinez. Not a whole lot to talk about there. Then Mateusz Rebecki defeats Roosevelt Roberts via armbar 3-0 to the first. Roberts stepping in on extremely short notice, missed weight. The short notice thing is, I imagine, the only reason he missed weight. He's been pretty standard in that. He's been pretty reliable about making weight. But everybody gets one. And dude, like on a week's notice, might have been less. I don't even think I previewed this one. I think I previewed Rebecki and wasn't it Nurullo Aliyev he was supposed to fight? Yeah. Oh no, I didn't have an opponent for him. So I think I said I had no problem picking him in the dark. Played out. Rebecki he's good. Physical, bit of a tank. Armbar from the back here to finish things, which is criminally underused in MMA as a technique. Unfortunate this fight came together under the timetable that it did, but Rebecki's good. Then another lightweight fight. I talked about it briefly already. Nazim Sadikov and Vyacheslav Borshev fought to a majority draw, two 28-28s, and then how did this? And then there was a 29-28 for Borshev from Brian Minor there. Idiot. Borshev has a pretty good first round. Has the jab working, just hitting the body a little bit, just having a good round. Wins the round. Second round, Sadikov cracks him with a punch, hits him with a front kick, it hurts him with a head kick, drops him, gets on top, keeps attacking. Borshev fights up, survives, gets hurt. Like he got dropped again near the end of it. It's a 10-8. It's a fairly textbook 10-8 round for Sadikov. Third round, Sadikov can't quite keep that momentum going. He cut open Borshev bad, though, by the way. That could have been a fight-stopping cut. Wasn't, but could have been. Just as an aside, could have stopped that. Borshev endures a tough, 90 seconds to the start of the third round. Then he's going again. Working the jab, hitting the body. He gets taken down at one point, gets up pretty quick, stops the next couple of takedowns, wins the third round. And I think the draw was correct. This was your fight of the night. Absolutely deserved to be fight of the night. Really good 3-round war from those two guys. Borshev is in a weird spot where He's got ability, but one of those guys who I think probably got to the UFC too early. Might be singing the same tune about Nazim Sadikov sooner rather than later. Clearly has ability, but not quite putting everything together the way you'd like to see. So, yeah, great fight. Look this one up if nothing else. Then on the early prelims, Jared Gordon defeated Mark Madsen via TKO, elbow and punches, 442 of the first. High-paced first round. Madsen coming out looking to push things, getting in the clinch, grabbing the single collar tie, knees and elbows, some good dirty boxing there. Gordon just kind of weathered a little bit of the storm and like, all right, if we're going to dirty box, I can dirty box. Cracks him with an elbow. They're coming out of one clinch earlier and he lands a right uppercut. That seems to set Madsen back on his heels a little bit. Gordon gets back on the attack, another clinch, uppercut, left elbow, right hand looping over the top of the shoulder onto the temple, drops him, all she wrote. Nice win for Gordon, who'd had some pretty seriously bad luck recently, so good on him. Next up, we get an agreed-upon catchweight fight. John Castaneda defeats Kyung Ho Kong via unanimous decision, 30-27 across the boards. Apparently, Castaneda told everyone earlier, like, hey, can a catchweight work here? He had some kind of an infection. My hunch is staph. He looked like he had a lesion on his thigh. But it's more that like the antibiotics and whatnot he was taking for it were going to throw off his weight cut. I don't know whether or not he was still like contagious when they got into the cage. But Kong was amenable to the catch weight. Pretty solid win here for Castaneda. Good movement, nice kicks, good stance switching. Yeah, solid little bantamweight fight. Then we had flyweights. Josh Van defeated Kevin Borjas via unanimous decision, 29-28 across the board. Fun little fight. I think it was Van 1, Borjas 2, Van 3. Yeah, good stuff from Van in the first. Borjas might have been 2 and 3. I don't remember exactly. Borjas cracked him at one point and really got him on his heels for the rest of that round. Van's body work. That's my big takeaway from this. Joshua Van will just roast your ribs like a barbecue, man. Ooh, he slowed Borjas down with those. Then kicking everything off, Jamal Emmers defeated Dennis Bazukia via TKO 49 seconds of the first round. Just hit a nice punch. Faked a left hook, right hand straight down the pipe, dropped him, dunzo. Emmers missed weight. He weighed 147 for this. After the fight, I mean, immediately afterwards, he was running around, very happy with the win, obviously, but started saying, 50 G's. Like, the UFC can violate their quote-unquote rule about missing weight and making you ineligible for bonuses, but they don't often. So you miss weight, you ain't getting a bonus. And he missed weight and did not, in fact, receive a bonus. So had he ever missed weight? We had a lot of guys miss weight for this one. It's just wound up happening that way, I guess. But that was the card. You know what? There were some lulls, but as a general rule, top to bottom, pretty good card. And a main card of all finishes, most of them pretty quick. Yeah, I'll take that. Your bonuses, fight of the night I already mentioned was Vyacheslav Borshev and Nazim Sadikov, completely deserved. Performance of the night went to everyone who won on the main card. Alex Pereira, Tom Aspinall, Jessica Andrade, Benoit Saint-Denis, and Diego Lopez. Once again, a reminder, the UFC could do this all the time. They choose not to, because they are greedy. If you want my full report, it's in the MMA Zone of 411mania.com. Give it a read as usual. Y'all know the drill by now. Thank you very much. Man, that took a while. I don't think the rest of this will take too long, but, we're going to go as long as we're going to go. And you already know how long that's going to be. Saturday, UFC on ESPN plus 90. Geez, this is one of those 15 fight cards. Hang on, I got to count now, because, jeez. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Oh, that's gonna suck. It's just too many. It's just too many. Why do you do this? Why do you do this to me? Just design. The UFC is like enhanced interrogation with the number of fights and the length of some of these cards, man. It's not good. It's not good. All right, but your main event, decent little middleweight fight here. We got Brendan Allen and Paul Craig. Allen on a pretty good winning streak. His last loss was to Chris Curtis. Since then, he's got wins over Sam Alvey, Jacob Malkoun, Christoph Yatko, Andre Muniz, and then Bruno Silva. Finished all of those except for the Malkoun win. Craig had a successful middleweight debut when he beat Andre Muniz back in July. We should be in for a pretty decent one here. My hunch is Allen. This is a well-matched fight. I can see either guy winning. I'm just gonna lean a little bit towards Allen here, but that's not a bad fight. The rest of this card, I'm struggling to care. Just gonna be honest with you guys. Welterweight Jake Matthews and Michael Morales. Matthews looked like he'd finally figured something out when he beat Andre Fialho. Then he immediately gets beat up by Matthew Semmelsberger. Rebounded okay beating Darius Flowers, but that was a wildly overmatched opponent. Um, Morales, double check him. He's fought in the UFC. And Ecuador, 15 and 3 and 0 in the UFC. Has he been out for a while? No, he beat Max Griffin recently. Oh, right. I remember that one. Also wins over Trevin Giles and Adam Fugit. I I don't know how to pick Jake Matthews at this point. I don't mean like to win. I mean I don't quite know what's up with him. He's been so up and down. I don't have a good read on him at this point. Which might make me lean towards Morales. Morales looked okay in his last fight when he beat Max Griffin. This is a step up for him. I am going to lean a little bit towards Morales. Yeah, I'm going with Morales. Not going to be shocked, though, if Matthews, has figured something out again and gets this one right. But I don't know. I can't get a read on Matthews at this point. At different points in his career, I've had a pretty good read on him. I don't at the moment. Lightweight, Chase Hooper and Jordan Levitt. Um, kind of a fun-ish fight here between two very good-natured fellows. Hooper looked pretty good beating Nick Fiore when he moved back up to lightweight. That was back in May. Levitt beat Victor Martinez. Got his first TKO win there. Strike related. He did have the slam of Matt Wyman. Levitt's a weird guy in the sense that you can see some of the pieces there. And he's kind of slowly putting them together in real time. This feels like it's designed a bit more for Hooper. Hooper does seem to have figured out more of who he is as a striker than Levitt has. On the mat, we might get some fun exchanges. Both guys are grapplers first. Not exclusively, but first, kind of and foremost. That's where they lean. Yeah, I'm going to lean towards Hooper. And this is not a gimme for him, but it does feel like a fight more with him in mind than Levitt. Bantamweight, we have Peyton Talbot and Nick Aguirre. Aguirre has fought in the UFC, I think at least once. 7-1. Yeah, lost his UFC debut to Dan Argueta. That was back in January. Talbot, 6-0. Coming off the Contender Series. Yeah, Contender Series guy. Pretty decent amateur career too, actually. Now that I look at it. Um, I've said this before, man. I think we're still in that position where some guys coming off the Contender Series are gonna get less than stringent matchmaking, and I don't think Nikigiri is a bum, but I think the UFC has in mind how this is gonna go, and I think that leans towards Talbot, and I'm okay leaning that way as well. We have women's strawweight action: Luana Pinheiro and Amanda Ribas. Probably Ribas, but there's a lot of somewhat upside in Ribas, but she's just kind of been there. She's had some tough losses too. Had some real tough losses. Um, I still feel like this is a fight for her. Pinheiro is 11-1. Make sure you are who I think you are. 3-0 in the UFC. A split with Michelle Waterson her last time out. She had the win over Sam Hughes. Oh, right. Like her UFC win was that she won via DQ after Randa Marcos hit her with an illegal up kick. This feels a little bit more like a Hebos style. Not by a whole lot. In fact, what are the odds on this? Odds are you get like 2-1 on Pinheiro. That might be a decent little value bet. Um, Still going with Hebos as well, but she's been so up and down that I don't know that I'd feel comfortable potentially paying out like again plus 200 on that. And kicking off the main card, we have Johnny Parsons and Uros Medic. Medic, 2-fight winning streak. Wins over Omar Morales and Matthew Semmelsberger. Hit that nice spinning back fist on Semmelsberger. I remember that one. Been out for a while though. That was July of 23. No, sorry. My mind has already started flashing forward to 24. Sorry. That was July of this year. Parsons, I think this is his UFC debut. Yes. No. No. The Slugger Not. Saw his nickname and I did a picture. I remembered him. 9-3. He won his UFC debut when he beat Danny Roberts. Um, Pretty decent upset actually. He did that. A lot of people were not. A lot of people not giving him much of a shot there. I think I'm still gonna lean towards Medic, but dude, if he gets into a brawl with Parsons, that'll go badly for him. I'm gonna lean towards Medic for the sake of a pick, but Parsons can slug it out. Don't sleep on him. I mean, that's your main card. Prelims. Jonathan Pierce and Joe Anderson Brito. That's not a bad fight, actually. Um, Pierce thinks on a what, 5? Yeah, his only loss in the UFC was his debut against Joe Lozon. Since returning to featherweight, he's on a 5-fight winning streak. Pretty decent level of opposition. Brito's been doing some decent enough work lately. Where are you? There you are. 15-3-1. 3-1 in the UFC. Lost to Bill Algeo, then beat on. Oh, I remember him stopping Andre Fili. Alexander, Weston Wilson. I think this is still a Pierce win. I think he's going to out wrestle him, but that's. I'm not going to be surprised if Brito pulls that one off. Brito's got some skill. Let's see, bantamweight, Chad Anheliger and Jose or Jose Johnson. Hang on, I require. gonna go with Jose. So, and Helliger's had a little bit of time in the UFC, 12-6, 1-1 in the UFC. Yeah, he lost to Alatong Hele. That was a tough loss. Johnson, 15-8, also 1-1, no, 0-1 in the UFC. Excuse me. Yeah, Damon Blackshear hit that. He was the guy that got twisted. I'll go with N. Helliger. Let's see, heavyweights, because screw you. Mick Parkin and Kyle Machado. What do we got here? Tell me something about these two. We didn't lose this fight, did we? No? It's still listed as being here. There it is, sorry. Alright, Mr. Parkin. 7-0. Had a good UFC debut. Um, for as good as heavyweights are, I guess. Kyle Machado, 8-1-1, coming into his UFC debut. Really know enough about either guy to feel super confident. I'll go with Machado. Not super confident, but I think that's where I'll lean. Ooh, the odds are pretty heavily on Parkin there. I mean, I'm sticking with my pick, but might be very wrong. Middleweight, Cesar Almeida and Christian Leroy Duncan. Almeida, coming into his UFC debut here, 4-0. Long kickboxing record, though. Um, Mostly in Brazil. Yeah, so not exactly. It did some stuff for glory. Not a whole lot of glory, but a couple of glory fights. Looks like some of those glory losses are what kind of prompted him to switch back over or back. Back. MMA debut was in 2016. Didn't fight again until 2021 in MMA at least. And very recently, yeah, losing in some glory stuff. So making the move to MMA full time. Fair enough. Good old CLD there. 8-1. I want to say 1-1 in the UFC. Yeah, lost to Armin Petrosian. Had that weird win over Dushko Todorovic, the knee injury. Another one of those guys who just moving around had the knee injury. Don't know how to feel about Duncan. And again, if he does a lot of striking though, man, you might be striking with a better striker. I also don't know how good Parsons is. Sorry, not Parsons. I'm not entirely sure about Almeida in small gloves versus big gloves. Let me lean towards Duncan just a bit, but just a bit. Not sure I love that one. Let's see. Next up, did I skip one? I reversed those on the order there. Sorry, my apologies. Next up, featherweight Jeka Sarig and Lucas Alexander. I probably butchered this gentleman's last name. He's from Indonesia. Lost to Anshul Jubilee in the Road to the UFC tournament doohickey they did back in February. Two really solid wins to get there, though. On that little tournament, enough to get him another shot at least. Alexander, by contrast, 8-3, 1-1 in the UFC. Lost to Drew Anderson Brito. Beat Steven Peterson. This is going to be a tough one. I might be leaning towards Alexander, but I don't know how good I feel about that. Yeah, I'm going to lean towards Alexander. Not sure what. Yeah, I don't know enough about Saragi to feel great. Let's see. Women's bantamweight next: Lucia Pudilova and Eileen Perez. Pudilova lost to Jocelyn Edwards her last time out. Beat Wu Yanan before that. That was her return to the UFC after going on a 4-fight losing streak with them from 2018 to 2020. Perez has been a little up and down in the UFC. Unless I'm confusing her with someone else. I might be actually. Perez is 8-2, 1-1. Yeah, I'm confusing her with somebody else. I don't really remember who, but she's coming off a win over Ashley Evans Smith. Is her nickname really Nurmagomedov? That's funny. Um, don't know about this one. I might lean Perez. I mean, it's not that Pudilova's bad, but she's just awkward. Yeah, I'm gonna lean towards Perez. Let's see. Lightweight next: Trey Ogden and Nicholas Mata. Hmm. Let's see. Mata, 13-5, 1-2 in the UFC. Lost to Jim Miller and Manuel Torres. In the middle, he had a win over Cameron Van Camp. Not exactly confidence building. Trey Ogden, 16-6, 1-2 in the UFC. Lost to Jordan Levin and Ignacio Bahamondes. Between those two losses, he beat Daniel Zellhuber. I guess Ogden, but these two guys might be fighting for their jobs here. Just candidly, I'm gonna lean towards Ogden. Flyweight: Charles Johnson and Rafael Estevam. Um, Boy, they buried Charles Johnson on this far down on the card. What he did to piss them off. He's 13-5. He's only 2-3 in the UFC, but he's shown some pretty serious ability. Estevam is 11-0. I think he won his UFC debut, didn't he? No, not making his UFC debut. I might lean towards Johnson here just because it amuses me to do so. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, I'll lean towards Johnson. I'm okay with that. And somewhere on this card will be a lightweight fight between Atman Azaitar and Darius Flowers. Azaitar on a 2-fight losing streak, losses to Matt Frivola and Francisco Prado. That's a little rough. Whereas Flowers lost his UFC debut, I seem to recall. Listed here? This is half listed as canceled. Was this supposed to be somebody else and we just haven't bumped it back up? Alright, I'm gonna make a pick and assume it's still on the card. I might, however, if I'm wrong, I apologize. Flowers is 12-6-1. Yeah, 0-1 in the UFC, lost to Jake Matthews. I think I would pick a Zaitar here. I think they're trying to get him right. Still listed here. It is. All right. Well, if that fight takes place, that's going to be my call on that. So, but Saturday, MMA Zone at 411mania.com. Per usual, I will have you covered. So, if this interests you at all, stop by, say hello. You know I always appreciate it. All right. Fight announcements. Let's hit these real fast, shall we? So the UFC dropped a bunch of these on us. Let's start with UFC 297. This will take place in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. We don't know the exact venue. We have the location. The first fight that was kind of announced for this leaked a little bit earlier. I don't think I talked about it last week, but it had been out. Raquel Pennington and Mayra Bueno Silva for the vacant bantamweight title on the women's side of things. I don't know why they're bothering, but we did get a main event, though, and it's not that one. For the middleweight title, Sean Strickland and Dricus du Plessis. Like that fight. I like that fight a lot. It's the right fight to make. It's the champion who earned the championship against the deserving number one contender. And if they can ever get Khamzat Chimaev to fight outside of the Middle East, maybe he can be in consideration. But it's a really good fight. My hunch at the moment is du Plessis, but like the fight. I already talked about Pennington and Bueno Silva. I don't care. Also at light heavyweight, I talked a little bit about this earlier, but the rematch between Blachowicz and Rakic will be here. Tough welcome back for Rakic, man, after that much time off. I mean, that injury happened, May of last year. He's been out for a while. Yeah, that's close to 2 years off. Rough fight back, man. That layoff makes me lean towards Blachowicz, but I still think Rakic has a lot of upside. Also currently announced for that card, Arnold Allen and Movsar Evloev, good fight. Charles Jourdain and Sean Woodson, good fight. Neil Magny doing something. Light heavyweight, Dominic Reyes and Carlos Ulberg. Boy, they are trying to show Dominic Reyes the door. Yeah. So, Chris Curtis will be fighting. Ooh, Chris Curtis and Marc-Andre Barrio. Circle that one. That's got some potential to be crazy. So 297, what we have right now, actually pretty darn solid. Pretty darn solid. So good on that one. 298 is going to be February 17th. We don't have a venue or a location yet, but the UFC announced that for the featherweight title, Alexander Volkanovski and Ilia Topuria. Somewhat related to this, Dana White, I think it mentioned that they wanted to try and have a UFC event in Spain in 2024. Admirable. Spain's kind of a pretty good market for MMA. Topuria, despite being born in Georgia, the country, not the state, I think he's native. He's was raised in Spain. That's his home. And dude is apparently a big deal in Spain. So we'll see how that goes. Volkan Topuria, one of the best fights you can make in the entire sport. Great pay-per-view main event. And for March 9th, UFC 299, again, no venue or location. For the bantamweight title, Sean O'Malley and Marlon Vera. Good old Cheeto for the second time. Sucks for Merab, who I think is the deserving number one contender, but apparently he's fighting Henry Cejudo. Okay. O'Malley and Vera's fine. That's a tough fight, man. Like, I'd rather it was... Actually, is Merab the deserving number one contender or is Corey Sandhagen? I'm not sure. Actually. Because Sandhagen did just beat Vera pretty cleanly. But the UFC kind of likes Vera. They like O'Malley, and if O'Malley wanted the rematch, then that's the direction they were going to go. So here we are. Vera might win that. I'm not saying I'm picking him. I haven't thought about it enough, but he might. So we got that announced. A few other things very briefly. The UFC indicated they have Dana White has booked the Sphere in Las Vegas for September 16th. assuming the sphere is still operational. Man, did you guys see this? Um, the lost, that big sphere doohickey in Las Vegas. Apparently, thus far, have lost 98 million dollars. Whoever is the CFO of the Sphere apparently quit. And I don't blame him. Did you lose almost $100 million of that thing in operation? Like, I don't know if it'll still be up in September, but the UFC's booked it if it is. So there's that. Yeah, that's most of the fights and the announcements. So I think the last thing I wanted to touch on before getting out of here, and we're coming up on 2 hours, so I promise I'll be quick. Um, TKO, the company that is the amalgamation essentially of WWE and UFC, their stock's in trouble. And Vince McMahon offloaded, it was like $700 million worth of stock. It was over 800 million. Was it over 800 million shares? Something like that. Just threw a bunch of stock out there, and because he sold it, he obviously made money. So he took again like 600 million, $700 million, I think, something like that. Just um, Vince. Somebody mentioned like Vince selling WWE to Endeavor so that he could maintain a degree of control and like keep it away from his kids, to then immediately be almost forced out by the new positioning of the board for the new entity TKO, is hilarious on these like deep levels. But yeah, one of the important members of this organization just selling off stock, that's not a bad sign. There's a group that owns a bunch of TKO stock. I think it's the Silver Lake Investment Group or whatever they are, who are trying to get enough seats on the board to take the company back private. Um, Dude, after they fought that hard to get an IPO, after Endeavor was like leveraged to the gills and the UFC's unfair business practices are the only thing keeping them afloat, just I don't know what they're doing over there. But that stock price going down. Going down. Um, we'll keep an eye on that. I don't expect. I will try to keep an eye on that going forward, such as I can, because it amuses me to do so, and it's news related, so occasionally it comes up. All right. Yeah, that's it. Let me check Twitter, see if anything crazy is broken. If not, we will do plugs and get out of here. All right. No, so plugs. Um. So Monday, which might be when you're listening to this, in the evening, over on the W2M network of podcasting, I'm part of Damn You Hollywood, usually pretty much every week. This week on Damn You Hollywood, myself, Mark, and I think Alexis will be joining us. I'm gonna check. Yeah, myself, Mark Radulich, and Alexis Haina will be reviewing The Marvels. I've been trying real hard to be more positive. There's a lot of things about myself, my mental state, that I've been trying real hard to change. I try not to swear as much as I used to. I've been trying to be more positive. Doesn't necessarily mean less critical, but, more positive. And then this comes along. So, you know, Oy. But 9 p.m. Eastern, Monday, the 13th, Mark Radulich, Alexis Haina, and I, we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it. So, Yeah. Yeah. Other than that, my regular spate of professional wrestling coverage, MLW stuff on Thursday, WWE SmackDown on Friday, UFC on ESPN Plus 90 on Saturday. All right, next week we will be back here to review UFC on ESPN Plus 90. There will be no preview because the next week after would be like right after Thanksgiving. Just 1 week? Yeah, that'll be the 25th. So, just a review next week. That's the 19th. On the 26th, we'll be back here to preview the UFC on ESPN 52 card. Boy, that's a pretty solid card. They're in right, they're in Austin, so they had to sell tickets. So we got Beneil Dariush and Armin Tsarukyan as your main event. Dan Hooker and Bobby Green as the co-main event. Rob Font, Davis and Figueiredo. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, a lot of good there. That's a really good fight night. I will be previewing that in 2 weeks. I'm looking forward to that one. Now watch it fall apart. I've tempted the irony gods. All right, that's it for me for this week, everybody. Thank you as always. I appreciate the heck out of you. Stay safe out there and continue to be well, be safe, and behave.